My name is Alan Niven, and whenever I was with rock and rollers, we would all look at each other and say, if we're going anywhere, we go to 11.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Well, there we
Yeah,
are. So,
the
so
march, the march of time, Reuben.
the march of time, right? I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's all these little things that happen as you get older, and all of a sudden, it's like the eyes are getting all trashed.
Well, I've had to wear glasses for most of my life, um, but I actually came into LA um, in September, it was I think.
Mm.
And I saw my old roommate there, Don Dawkins,
Oh yeah,
and oh my God, he got out
yeah.
his telephone and he showed me his X-rays of his body,
Oh
and I
yeah,
swear to God, he is so full of metal that obviously I could not avoid making the wisecrack that
right.
his biggest medical problem is going to be metal fatigue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's had a series of ailments, right? And the back thing is the biggest, I think.
The back thing was the major issue.
Right.
And I've got a very good friend of mine here in Prescott who's a really good drummer.
Hmm.
And he's actually started playing again, but he couldn't play for a long time because he went in to have an operation and they fucked him up.
Oh,
So
sure.
if anybody who's listening to this has a bad back, don't let them operate on you. It just goes downhill from there.
Right. Right. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I think at some point, I think it'd be great to chat about some stories of your time with Don as well, because I mean, the reason I reached out to you was to speak about the stage album, which was released as in its entirety finally in the U.S. Like when was this? This was like it was a few years back yet, but still, it seems pretty fresh to me because I was so used to just the single disc version forever. Um, but it is celebrating an anniversary here. It was released in 1995. So
Was it 95 or 94?
it was recorded in 94, released in
Yeah.
95. So yeah, I mean, it was, if my recollection was correct, I mean, some of these recordings, wow, yeah, there you go. That's it right there. You
Now
got the
this,
vinyl, I got the CD.
this one's still sealed, but it says
Nice.
limited edition white vinyl on it.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was recorded in 94 and 93.
that's what it was. Yeah.
This one was remastered by Chris Catero, and he did a very good job on the remastering. Um,
S-
in point of fact,
So, y-
it, it's a little disingenuous to comment on your own work and creativity and
right,
contributions, but perhaps it's allowable, especially since it's 30 years old now, that
right,
you can make a comment on it because it's been a long time and you get
right,
an objectivity and you also get a sense of context of what else was around at the time. Um, and as far as stage goes, if the ship is sinking and I can only grab one Great White record, that would be it.
right,
When I was a nipper, I went through a period of time where I thought live records are the most significant records because they're the most honest representation and are devoid to some degree of studio crafting. So if you really want to know what the band sounds and feels like, go and buy a live record. Well, of course, that gets abused. I mean, the famous records, the Eagles, for example, was all done live, was all done in studio. Frampton Comes Alive is a very questionable disc. Feels great, but was it really live in front of an audience?
Right.
But the one thing I can say about Stage is it is not just genuinely live, but it is unfixed. Michael and I did no fixes of what was recorded once we were putting the album together and sequencing the album. What you hear on that record is what was played at the time, in the moment, on the night. And, we think about today where we're listening to this and going, auto tune. Oh, that's auto tuned. Oh, there's auto tuning right there. I mean, you can go on YouTube and there's a guy
Right.
whose whole reason for existence is to take live stuff and show that it's not. And he does it with graphs and
Right.
pitch assessment and so on and so forth. But with Stage, it's an entirely honest record.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm proud of. And I'm
Yeah.
proud of the band for that. And not only that, it's it's a pretty good track listing. I mean, you'd need a box set to go
Sure.
through all the worthwhile performances that we recorded. But if you just want one record, this would do it.
Right. What's interesting, and we've had this conversation before with the Sail Away record. I really enjoy that record. We've had conversations about that one, about the artwork, about the content, all that stuff. Clarence Clemens making an appearance on there. I mean, all sorts of stuff on that. With Stage, some of the recordings that were on Stage were available before on the Sail Away. I think it was initially pressed with a live disc, bonus disc. So some of the stuff was already out. I think it was the material recorded in Anaheim in '93 was some of that material had
Some of
made
that
it.
was, yeah. And God, now I've got to remember 30 years ago. Come on, Ruben, give me a break.
Well, we
know,
have to dig deep in the memory banks here.
I'm fucking old and falling apart as it is. My brain don't work no more. So to remember back 30 years, good Lord.
Right.
But what I do have a memory of is that at the time we put out not Stage, on Sail Away, on Zoo
Right.
Records, who no longer exist, we were in the middle of a real backlash against 80s bands, and we were in the middle of, call it grunge if we have to describe it, but it was definitely a lot more difficult to get people's respect and attention.
Right.
And my thinking was simple. Let's give away a free record, a free live album with the studio album, and price it accordingly. Now, this is one of the many mistakes that I made in my time. What I should have done was have the price of the record actually in the artwork itself. But I'm sure you can understand that I thought that was a little offensive. It's a little bit like going into the supermarket and, buy one, get one free. I don't want that on the artwork. It's offensive. But the problem was almost every single retailer and distributor upped the price and sold it as a double album, so that we were screwed. The whole idea of putting out a studio album with a free live album at the price of the studio album got totally fucked over by distributors and retailers, because they could take off the sticker. that we put on. So I should have just put the price into the artwork, but
Right.
you know, that looks so cheesy to me.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I mean, did that count as double the amount of sales on that one? Being that, or no, it was listed originally as a single disc, and then they
Yeah,
sold it for they upped the price, is what you're saying?
yeah, they just upped
Yeah.
the price,
Oh boy.
which,
But what?
which kind of defeated the whole issue.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then where I wanted people to get something cool and something that I could go, you're a fan of the band, this record's worth having. You'll like these live versions of songs you've already bought. Boom, Um, instead of that, they were paying for a double album, which made it
Right.
harder to sell instead of easier to sell. So thank you, retail. Thank you, distribution.
Right. Yeah. Right. And this is these recordings were, they're about that time that well, some prior to the Sail Away album, and then the other one, the 94 recording, is obviously post Sail Away release. Now the band was different at that point. I mean, because I think when we've had conversations about that going into the Sail Away sessions, something happened with the band. I mean, it was almost like, I think when we've had the conversation in the past, it was almost kind of like, I think you referred to it as kind of like the band's Eagles record. It had more. Would you say credibility to the songwriting? I mean, there was a lot of great stuff on there.
We made a really good record with Psycho City. That's a really strong and powerful disc from start to finish.
Sure. Right.
And we were running into the Seattle backlash. And for me, I sat down with the band and said, I don't like the idea of trying to remake that record and doubling down. If there's a way to get beyond that kind of backlash, then I think we need to take a slightly different approach in constructing Sail Away. And it's people have said in the past, oh, it's an acoustic record. It's not a fucking acoustic record. It's not nearly a fucking acoustic record. But it's not idiotic, low frequency, low IQ bombast either. There's an intelligence in it. And there are songs on Sail Away that could just as easily have been on Once Bitten, the first Capitol record. So, I find it tiresome when there's a statement of, well, Sail Away was an acoustic album. It wasn't at all.
Right.
But in what your observation is, there's a little validity in the thinking, in that if you go through the catalogue, and the catalogue that we produce for that band is actually pretty thick and broad. There's a lot of good performances of a lot of great songs there. Because we used to do EPs for Japan, EPs
Right.
for Europe, and so on and so forth, to support touring. But if you go through the catalogue, no one record repeats the previous one. And that was deliberate in terms of attitude, content, sound, approach, energy. They're all a little bit different. And that for me, I thought was valid. I mean, you can go and work with Mutt Lange and be Def Leppard and produce the same Air Candy record after record after record, and Mutt's the driver at the wheel. But then what else would you have a boy band do?
Right.
And as much as I love Leopard, they're basically a boy band. They're not the Rolling Stones. They're not Keith Richards. They're not Jimi Hendrix. They're not Bob Dylan. They don't write like Lennon. They make ear candy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't make ear candy with Great White. We avoided that.
Right.
And in terms of growth and growing, we all had our own viewpoints and we all put our own spices and herbs into the stew. But for me, looking forward, past Sail Away, the concept that I had in mind was a cross between Pink Floyd and the Eagles as guides. In other words, intelligent songs. Because Don Henley is one of the best lyricists. He writes very intelligent songs, but in guitarscapes that would suit a Gilmour, or more importantly, suit a Kendall. So in looking past Sail Away, that's what I wanted to bring into the pot.
Right.
Was let's make sure that these are really smart songs, and let's do arrangements that are not predictable and leave Kendall acres of room to be expressive.
Right.
So that's that. You're picking up on something there.
Yeah.
Henley's always been a person I've admired, and he's been an influence on me from the earliest. I mean, the early Eagles songs like, what's the one about Winslow, Arizona? I mean,
Take It Easy.
yeah, I mean, okay, fine, country rock. But Henley always came up with something a little smarter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the heart of Hotel California is actually a pretty interesting social statement.
Yeah.
And his latest solo records are fabulous, brilliant.
Yeah.
Inside Job is an amazing record.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a drummer that sings.
Well, we can forgive that.
So,
I mean, for me, it's like, hey, Don, do one or the other
mm-hmm.
to a point of excellence. Don't do both pretty good. I mean, and as a drummer, he's okay.
Yeah.
He sat in on a TV performance with GNR
Right.
one time. And let me recall what happened. Stevie Adler,
Yeah.
in a moment of pure Adler brilliance, had smashed his fist into a lamppost or a wall. And we had a performance coming up. I can't remember if it was an AMA or an MTV, but it was one of those big televised deals.
Mm-hmm.
And we were screwed. We got no fucking drummer. What are we going to do? And Slash says to me, should we cancel? And I said, you know what? Let me run this by you. I know a drummer who owes us a favor. And he said, really? Who are you thinking of? I said, Don Henley. And he kind of looked quizzically at me, and I said, listen, Don had Axel sing on his last record.
Right.
And I put that together and made sure it happened and made sure it wasn't a problem and got through the night, and he owes me one. So let me try Don. And of course, Don was really excited about sitting in for Guns N' Roses. I mean, it's a little bit of youthful cred for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to do rehearsal at a place called Mates over in the valley. And I'm sitting on this disgusting sofa. I swear to God, I mean, gum and God knows what in the fabric. It's just revolting. But I'm sitting there and I'm having a little personal moment.
Right.
There's my band on stage with an eagle on the drums. And they're playing, and I'm the only one in the room, and this is fucking cool.
Right.
Wow. I never thought I'd ever be in this kind of position.
Right.
Slash, the stage is about a foot high off the ground, and Slash hops off and he comes over to me, and I get up and go to him. And he says something in my ear, and I look at him and I go, no, there's no fucking way I'm doing that. He kind of gave me a look and was like, fuck no. And then he gets back on the stage. And as he's going back on the stage, Duff comes down and says almost exactly the same thing to me. And Duff's a little taller and he gives me the beady eye of, you need to do this. And I went, oh, all right. So I walk up on the stage and I stand next to Henley, who's playing away, and the band's playing. And Henley's tapping away on his drums. And he kind of looks at me and then looks away. And he looks at me and he looks away. And then he looks at me and he goes, what? And I lean down and I go, Don, is there any way that you can play these drums with a little more strength? My band can't feel you. He starts going away. But, you know,
Yeah.
never in my life did I think I'd have to be standing on a rehearsal stage saying, Don, you're a drum tickler. This is a rock and roll band. Lean into it.
Right.
There was a back end to that story.
Right.
We were at Farm Aid in 1991, I think it was, in Indianapolis. And I'm backstage and I can see Henley coming towards me. And he's got a friend with him and they're making a beeline for me. And I'm going, oh, fucking hell. That's Carl Perkins.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's Carl Perkins and the pair of them making a beeline for me. And in my head, I'm going, I remember singing Carl Perkins songs with my mom in the car when I was a tiny kid. Oh my God, I'm about to meet Carl Perkins. And the pair of them come right up to my face. And Henley, without introducing Carl, leans into me and goes, well, motherfucker, did I hit the drums hard enough for you tonight?
Wow. There
Yeah.
you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I was going to ask you what the feedback was, so I guess you got right into it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
So
Henley's a bit of a drum tickler, but
yeah.
my God, can he write a song?
Oh yeah. There was I know we talk about Psycho City. Again, that's a great record. And I think it was almost like you said, it was the end of that phase of the band going into the new phase of the band almost. But you know, the one thing in having this Eagles kind of connection to the whole thing was was the artwork at all inspired by Hotel California? I mean, I almost
No,
think that was probably a connection there,
no, there's no
strategic.
connection at all. The artwork is a huge and famous painting by Theodore Géricault, and it hangs in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and it's dying. This thing is falling apart, and it's falling apart because Géricault mixed bitumen into his paints to make the blacks more intensely black, and the bitumen is eating the canvas that he painted on. So one day that painting will be gone, which is a tragedy. And as an image, and it's based on a true event that occurred off the coast of Africa, where a ship sank and there was 2 life rafts, if I remember correctly, and they tried to keep a line between them, and one of them got to the coast and the other one just disappeared. And Jericho took that circumstance to make an amazing visual metaphor for where we are in our world.
Right.
That we're on a life raft and we could be sinking. And if you look very carefully at the painting, on the horizon, is a tiny little dot. It's a ship. And the inherent question is it coming to save us? Or is it going in the other direction? Are we doomed?
Right.
And you can tell by the condition of the people on the life raft that they're close to being pretty doomed as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look around at the world we're in at the moment, and just the sense of ridiculous chaos that we have at this time. That visual metaphor is very appropriate and very apt. And I wrote a song called Sail Away.
Mm-hmm.
Which very much attempts to make a cogent comment about we come into the world on our own, we go out of the world on our own.
Right. Right.
You know, are we always alone at sea? So that was Sail Away, that was Jericho, that was my feeling at the time. Is, are things good or are things bad? Are we going to get saved, or is that ship going in the other direction? So that's why we use that. And I have to laugh because I approached the Musée d'Orsay and asked permission to use the painting for the cover.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't even respond to me. I went, I get it. I have an English accent and I'm calling from Los Angeles. And the French just have no respect for the English, and they only like American girls and American films. So we're not going to. So my brain got working, and I called the was the BMG. I think we were working through their office in Paris. And I said, is there somebody there who can call them and speak in French and ask if we can use it, and so on and so forth, and this is why we want it, and so on. And within 2 days, because somebody French called them and said, oh, we have this band in America and they wish to use the cover, they went, sure, you can use it. But they didn't want to hear from an Englishman calling from LA.
Right. Yeah. So the stage here, and what an opening tune. I mean, that opens the disc one or vinyl one. You know, we got Train to Nowhere. I mean, geez.
It's a great song.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, for sure.
It's an admonition. It's a warning. Oh, you want to do a couple more rails of coke? You want to burn your brain out? You want to have the front of your head completely vacuous? Well, let's just get onto the train to nowhere, the rails to nowhere. It was a Savoy Brown song, who are an old English R&B band who were rather good and had a good singer. And I think part of that band developed into, if I'm right, Foghat.
Foghat, yeah. That's right.
But Train to Nowhere is one of those songs that's got an instant vibe, an instant sense about it. And it says something that's kind of interesting. You know, what are you doing all this rock and roll for? Because you want to burn your brain out with coke?
Right.
Is that going to be worthwhile?
And then I'm going to bounce around here. I mean, we already talked a little about Sail Away. Just some of the stuff that isn't typically on the Great White set list, but you know, Congo Square is another good one. I mean, a lot of these renditions on this record, and you're not kidding, it's like a hits deep cuts type record.
Yes. slightly higher IQ, slightly higher frequency.
Right. Right.
Um, you know where Congo Square is?
I think we've talked about that before. Off the top of my head, I cannot recall at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you this. For the longest time, I haven't known what to do with my mortal remains when I kick off. And I get asked sometimes by the wife, what do you want me to do with your fucking bag of bones when it's
Right.
fucking not working anymore?
Yeah.
And she said, maybe I'll plant you under a tree or something and get a tree implanted over. And then one day I was sitting there and going, I know what to do. I've known for fucking decades what to do. You burn it and you take the ashes and you take them down to Congo Square and you spread them there. And that is my journey complete. Congo Square is in New Orleans.
Okay.
And it's just to the northwest of the Vieux Carré, the French Quarter. And it has a relevance to music in that when the French still owned New Orleans, they let the slaves go into the Congo Square on a Sunday and perform their spiritual rituals. So geographically, Congo Square is the place where African rhythms meet with Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian folk music. So if you're looking for the birthplace of rock and roll, there it is. That's the birthplace of jazz. That's the birthplace of rock and roll. That park, because that's when the African rhythms started to seep into the Caucasian consciousness. And with the song itself, it's going through a very disastrous emotional circumstance. And I just got the idea that if I could go back to the beginning, if I could go back to where the music that I love the most was inseminated, I might be able to raise my soul and my consciousness back to living.
Right.
That there might be something about being in Congo Square that might get me to a place where I felt like I could go on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I use Congo Square in that context. And one of the things I think we were good at was in creating things that didn't have the predictable arrangement format. Intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus. Second verse, pre-chorus, chorus, solo, chorus is out. Just like, I have to hear one more song formatted like this because radio wants it to come in at 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not going to do that. Face the Day, Rock Me, Congo Square, even House of Broken Love, they all stretch because I would not allow the clock to rule creation. If the arrangement needed more room, then the arrangement got more room. If we wanted to construct a bigger area for Kendall to stretch out in, we would do that. And that goes back to, when I was a kid, hearing songs like Loan Me a Dime on Boz Scaggs' first record, which has got an incredible coda played by Duane Allman. And the delightful story about that is the rest of the band complained that Duane played too loud. And he was only playing through a Fender Twin, but he was playing too loud. So they took his Fender Twin and they went down the corridor and into the bathroom and sat him down on a john and put his amp in the John with him and said, "You can play in here." So when you're listening to that magnificent stretch that he plays in Loan Me a Dime, he's sitting on the John in the bathroom, away from the studio, and he plays like that. Oh my God.
Yeah. Right.
But, in, and again, I think there was a greater propensity amongst late 60s and early 70s English musicians to be a little more creative and adventurous in stretching with arrangement. And, that's obviously something that was in my baggage when I came here.
Right. Right. And then I guess another one of the highlights, closing out the first disc, is Afterglow, which was a great selection. You always had a thing for picking the right like cover for the band to
Oh,
tackle.
thank you. I picked them all.
Yeah.
But what I had was Jack fucking Russell. And he could sing. So
Right.
in terms of picking things, I could find songs that had a quality, an emotion, a spirit, an intelligence to them, and know that I wasn't just dealing with somebody who was going to be yelling at the microphone. I knew I was with somebody who could convey those emotions, spirits, and intelligences, that he wasn't a vocalist. If I say there are vocalists in rock and roll, and there are singers in rock and roll, and the singers are more few and far between. There are countless vocalists who can basically stay in pitch while they're shouting. But there's a little bit more to it when you have a singer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And we get into the second disc. I mean, the second disc is heavy, like heavy on the tunes, all the hits, and then some of the deeper cuts. Again, we got Face the Day on there, another one of those covers that you were brilliant in selecting. But Old Rose Motel, I mean, this one's a pretty fiery rendition of this one on
It
here.
is. Yep.
And I mean, just going back to Old Rose Motel and Psycho City album, there's an inspiration behind this particular. I mean, the artwork for that album.
Well,
It's a darker. Is it a darker album? It is, right? Because it starts off with that recording of the. There's a story
death threat.
behind that. Yeah,
Yeah.
the death threat, but that was a real death threat.
That was a real death threat. And believe it or not, I eventually found out who left it on the fucking phone.
Ah, but that was aimed at who, like Jack or something?
No. It was my ex-wife's boy toy.
Oh, oh wow.
Yeah.
It sounded like a mobster. I mean, it sounded like somebody had a hit on somebody.
Well, he was in the Marines, and he was in Central America doing some really dark and nasty things down there. So darkness and nastiness were not alien to his nature. But the whole thing about Psycho City, I mean, it's Psycho City. We've got to a point where we're living in LA and going, what the fuck? This place is insane. People here are insane. They have insane motives, insane ambitions, insane drives, and they'll step on anybody to get where they want to get to. We open with Psycho City, we open with a death threat, but we close, if I remember correctly, we closed the record with, I think, a song called Get On Home.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a lovely little moment of wanting home and also having the hope of finding home. And that song was not in pre-production. We didn't have it when we were recording. And there was we recorded at this ranch up in Santa Ynez, and I was down in the main room. We had the drums in the fucking fireplace. That'll give you an idea of the ranch. We set up the drums in the fireplace. And Mikey came down and he said, you know, you need to go upstairs and listen to what Kendall's playing. And I looked at him and I go, really? And he goes, just sneak upstairs. And Kendall was in his room, in his bedroom, and with his acoustic guitar, and he was just noodling away. So I snuck up the stairs and down the corridor and just hung outside the door, and I went, oh, hello, we're not finished. That's good.
Yeah.
And it started to open doors for me, you know, in terms of content. And that's how Get On Home came together. And it was kind of perfect because it was the last thing that came together. It was the last thing that was written. And it closes out the record. And it leaves you with a sense of, yeah, my values are still down home and good.
Right.
And I'm hoping that I am going to have a home at some point. So that was Get On Home. You know, because all of Psycho City is just basically bitching about the negatives that we were observing.
Yeah. The artwork, that was an actual place, right? An actual
It was a
motel, I think.
motel just down the street from where I lived. And it had this glorious, huge neon sign outside. It's huge. I don't know if it's still there. You know, if I drove past it once, I drove past it maybe 5,000 times.
Right.
Okay. And when I was getting into the content and looking for the chorus of Old Rose Motel, that came to mind because it was a place that had a great neon sign, but the vibe of the place was, this is shifty here. This is where bad things happen. This is where dark things happen in this motel. This is where people go and hide and do their negative shit.
Right.
So, you know, and there were two people in particular that I was thinking of when constructing the content for Rose Motel. And that's the kind of place that they'd have snuck off to.
Yeah, right.
So it all started to coalesce, you know. And at that point I went, well, we've got the song Old Rose Motel now, and I think we now have the cover.
Yeah.
Because it's glorious.
Yeah. There's a story behind the photo in the back of the cover. It looks like it's a mansion. I forget. There was some kind of a story behind that, I think, that you had told me a while back.
Oh, well, you know, I used to do a bit of the photography. I did most of the photography on that record. But I was looking for somewhere that was absolutely quintessential California. Something that you looked at and you went, there's only one place that can be, you know. Something that had a great beauty and seduction to it, because California has its beauty and its seduction until it pulls you in and pulls you apart. California is like some sort of carnivorous plant that gives off a great aroma and has beautiful, beautiful flowers. But if you let it, it'll eat you. So I was driving around Palos Verdes, looking at houses, thinking, maybe one of these houses might be cool. And I saw one in particular that was just gorgeous and magnificent. And having a little bit of bottle and being English, I get away with a lot because I have an English accent, or did back then. I went and knocked on the door and I said, I'm doing a shoot for an album, for a band that's on Capitol Records. You have this gorgeous house. Can I possibly bring the band down here and shoot them on the outside of the house here? Because it's exactly what I'm looking for. And the lady of the house said, well, well, of course, come on down. So I went down there and we shot a few rolls of film. That's the days when we used to shoot rolls of film, and got some lovely pictures. And I went to knock on the door to say thank you. And the lady of the house said, "Well, would you like to come in and have a cup of tea?"
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? I'd like to see the inside. And we're in the kitchen, and I'm looking around, and there were a whole bunch of photographs in silver frames. And I looked at one and I said, "Excuse me for asking, but isn't that Margaret Thatcher standing next to you in this picture?" And of course, Margaret Thatcher had been the Prime Minister
Prime
of
Minister.
England for 13 years, I think it was, from the 70s through the 80s. And the lady of the house turned around and said, "Oh yes, Margaret's a good friend of ours. We sometimes loan her our jet."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so you can imagine what the house is like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's the story. That's what it was. It was Margaret Thatcher, the photograph that you saw
yeah.
in there.
In the
Yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah. But yeah, lots of great stuff on that record, and again, fiery performance on Old Bros Motel on the stage album. And then that goes back to, there's a handful of covers on the second disc, which we already mentioned, Face the Day. Next one is Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Was it you that and you said it in a nice way, just kind of a Jack, I think, innocently saying something about, um, I think at one point you were listening to some blues, and was it Jack that said something to the effect of, "Why is this guy playing Led Zeppelin?" Something to that effect. Is that you? That was you.
Yeah, yeah. We'll quickly get that one out of the way. Because you can, with the broad brush, Ruben, you can go back and say, "It's us fucking English guys what taught you fucking Americans what
Right.
fucking blues was all about. Because we brought it back from England after it bounced from America to
Right.
London."
Right.
So one evening, I'm sitting with Jack and Mark, and I go, "You need to listen to this because I don't think you know it." And I played this record, and Mark and Jack were kind of looking at each other and giving each other looks and going. And finally, Jack said, "Dude, Nib, why is this old black guy trying to play Led Zeppelin?" And I said, "Because he's playing his own music and his name is Willie Dixon. And that's where Led Zeppelin got it from."
Right.
It's one of the major places. I think if I prepped, I could probably go through a dozen songs,
Hmm.
well-known Zeppelin songs, and tell you where they got them. Okay, they were bad boys at doing that, at
Right.
appropriating and not giving due credit.
Sure.
But with Babe, sometimes I'd get a phone call from MTV, from John Connelly at MTV, and he'd say, "We're doing this new program. I need a band for it. Will the White Ones do it?" And I would always say yes, because I always wanted to keep John Connelly on side, because I always wanted my band's videos to get some
Right.
showing. And I think we did this about 3 or 4 times, and each time nothing happened. The show was ditched because it was terrible and it was lousy, and you knew it in the moment. But they paid for us to go to New York. They paid for us to be in a good hotel. They paid us a bit of pocket money, and we played a song, and bye bye. That's the end of it. And I get a phone call from Connelly, and he goes, "I need the White Ones, and I need them fast." And I go, "What are you doing now?" He said, "Well, we're going to try this new program." And I'm like, "Oh, great, here we go again."
Right.
And I need the White Ones to be a part of this program. you'll be on the same night as Don Henley and Damn Yankees. And I said, okay, this sounds serious. You got something going on. I go, what is it? He said, you need to play 2 songs acoustically.
Right.
No problem. What I didn't know is that MTV executives who hated the Midwestern vibe of rock and roll in the 80s because they lived in Manhattan and they went to
Right.
Manhattan style clubs. So they were not connected to what we were all connected to. But in a meeting, they'd said, these fucking bands can't play. Let's have our way with them. Let's make them play acoustic and show them up for how bad they are. Well, that worked out well, didn't it, Unplugged?
Right.
But the night we had to go to A&M Studios, I picked Jack up. I used to have this amazing XJS then. And back in 1988, I spent 17,000 1988 US dollars to have a stereo put into my car, and it was ungodly. It was like sitting in a pair of headphones
Oh,
driving.
wow.
It was stunning.
Yeah.
So I picked Jack up. Oh, we're driving up to Hollywood, and just on a whim, I popped in a CD and played him a song. And I looked at him and I said, do you think we could pull that off? Could you do it? And he goes, fuck yeah, I can do that in my sleep. I went, okay, I think you can. Let's find out if Mark feels the same way. So we went into the green room that we had, and they rug jammed it twice. Sitting on the carpet, on the floor, rug jammed Babe twice, went out and did a sound check on the set. And let me tell you, Ruben, as hard as it is to consider, that sound check on the set with just the grips and the people who were putting lights up and so on was absolutely stunning.
Right.
People were freezing and turning around and looking and going, oh my God, what is that? How the fuck are they pulling that off? It was better than the actual performance. And the performance is pretty fucking good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
the one thing about the performance that always makes me laugh is if you look carefully, you can see Kendall's right hand is doing this.
Oh, okay. I'll have to pull that up.
He's fucking terrified he's going
Yeah.
to fuck up. But he got through it and he played
Mhm.
it well. And that would have been the very first Unplugged record. And we even got as far as putting together a cover for it.
Okay.
But I put a stop to it because, one, we only had a 2-track. They recorded straight to 2-track for broadcast. So I didn't have a 2-inch that I could do any sweetening on at all. And the other thing is, this is supposed to be something special. MTV was supposed to be something unique in doing Unplugged. It should be something that you could only see if you went to MTV. And I thought putting a record out kind of goes against the spirit of it.
Right.
So I said no. What a fucking genius I was. I said no to doing the first Unplugged
Right.
record. Shoot me. You know, what a dumbass. But that was my thinking at the time.
Yeah.
That it should just be special on this program.
And yeah, I mean, and that was one of the special performances. Another one that stands out for me was the Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, he was on
Yeah.
fire as well.
Yeah. Stevie Ray,
Stevie Ray.
who went down in a helicopter behind Alpine Valley.
Right. Right.
Alpine Valley was one of my favorite gigs. It's a really, really cool, natural auditorium that had, slightly rolling hills, and it kind of meshed, curved around so as it faced the stage. It was a really cool place to play.
Nice. So that was Babe. I'm going to leave you. Rock Me again. Boy, that was actually my introduction to Great White on MTV. Ironically, we were just talking about MTV, watching that video. I mean, you can't go wrong. You got a bluesy rockin' band, and no makeup, none of that stuff, just
Yeah,
leather,
yeah,
and shirts,
yeah,
boots, and then the mermaid. I mean, geez,
yeah.
what could be better?
Tracy,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tracy.
So
I put
what a
Tracy
what
on
a
the cover.
tune.
I put Tracy in the videos.
Yeah.
You know, again, I had this thought of everybody's got to have a bimbo. The record companies demand bimbos in the videos. But what if we have a great white girl instead of a bimbo? And she's in all the videos, and she's on the cover, and there's some mystery, some story about it. Where did she come from? Why is she on, is she a
Right.
friend? Is she socially connected? You know, um, and of course, this other English guy called David Coverdale
Oh yeah.
falls for Robin Crosby's ex-girlfriend,
Yeah, Tawny
Tawny
Katane.
Katane, and does exactly the same thing, puts her in all the videos. And it was like, fuck.
Right.
Why did you have to have a record this year too?
Yeah, no kidding.
You just took my idea.
Yeah. But Rock Me again, even the edited version. I've gone back over time and picked up like some of the memorabilia, CD single. There's the edited version, but I mean, even if you take the edited version, it doesn't suck the life out of that tune. They might subtract a few half a minute or something from it, mostly the guitar solo stuff, but it still
Still goes fine.
hits the spot. It still hits the spot. So I mean, a good song, regardless of how
Yeah.
the label tries to butcher it, just to get it airplay, is still a good
Well,
song.
you, you got to remember, Ruben, that we came into Capitol in a slightly unusual way because we had been signed to EMI USA, and Capitol Records was the over company of EMI USA. They're basically the same company. So we got dropped by EMI USA and then got signed by the parent company, Capitol. How does that happen?
Yeah,
Well, that's a
right.
long story. Um, but the reason that we got signed by Capitol was because of Face Today basically being the song of the summer in LA in 1986. I mean, got to try and remember her name. The music director at KMET, Judy McNutt. God bless you, Judy McNutt. I love you. Judy decided to play the record, although it wasn't on an established company. It was on my label. My label was just me. Okay. So, first of all the record labels are going, how come she's playing this indie record? Playing this indie record? She moved it up into medium. Then she moved it up into heavy. And she banged it for 8 freaking weeks in heavy rotation. The record companies are going, what's this guy
Right.
got that we don't? We have the coke, we have the expensive dinner budgets, we have all the tricks and treats to benefit our signed artists, and yet this one's taking up this much playtime during the day. Judy called me up and she said, come and talk to me. And I went up to KMET and she said, it's been fantastic, but I played it for 8 weeks in heavy. It's time to move on. Have you got another song as good as this? And I said, no, Judy, we don't have another song as good as this. Are you kidding me? This is exceptional. This is an exceptional song, an exceptional moment. She said, well, I'm going to have to pull it. And I had it. For all the mistakes I made every now and then, I had some good thinking. And I looked at her and I said, Judy, do me a favor. Just do some more phone out research before you pull it. Just do some more phone outs, see what people are saying. And she looked at me and she sort of quizzically and she said, okay, I will. I think she liked the tea bag. She called me up a few days later and said, you are not going to fucking believe this. This song is still growing. The call-out research is phenomenal. I am going to bang this thing for another 8 weeks. And she did. We had 16 weeks in heavy rotation. KLOS came on board. We went straight into heavy on KLOS. And of course, KNAC had been playing it before KMET. So we had all 3 stations on this track. And it was done independently and done by myself. So when we re-signed with Capitol, it wasn't like we needed nursemaiding. It wasn't like we needed an A&R man. And eventually we didn't need an outside producer. So we were left to our own devices, which meant that if we wanted to make a Congo Square, we could.
Right.
If we wanted to make a Rock Me, we could, because we didn't have anybody in the room saying you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So we did what we wanted to do. I mean, the whole thing about me getting into production, I mean, I did a little bit of sitting in production before Once Bitten, but the whole thing about that was Tom Wally, the A&R guy, and I put together a list of producers that we would like. And there were A's and B's and C's and D's. And the A's all said no, and the B's all said no, and the C's all said no. And eventually Tom called me up. And I remember I was driving down 190th, heading towards the beach, going for lunch. And Tom Wally calls me on my car phone. And he goes, we have an interest from this particular producer, one of the D's. I said, oh yeah, okay. What's he want? 4 points and $75,000. And before I could stop myself, I reacted. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Name me one fucking record he's done that qualifies him to make a demand of 75 grand and 4 points. I can produce the band better than he can. And it was out of my mouth. There was silence on the phone. And Tom Wally said, you think so? I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I can. He said, go and cut 4 songs. Done. One of the 4 was Rock Me.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came in and he heard that, he said, finish the record, your producer.
Nice. That's awesome. In the next tune, going in with the theme of picking brilliant covers, you got Can't Shake It on here. Again, another, I think it basically it comes down to you had the ability to even select these obscure songs, at least for the United States audience. I mean, they were well known elsewhere. So that went on there too, but that's another great cover. And then Once Bitten, Twice Shy. Again, we all know that one. Basically, yeah. Go ahead.
The art of a cover is, first of all, it's got to be a really good song. The second thing is, hopefully, it was never a hit. That for some reason or another, a really good song went by the by. And thirdly, you make it your own with your approach and your performance. It's got to be a convincing performance. It can't sound like somebody's going through karaoke, even if they're going through karaoke really well. Right. It's really and I had Jack. All right. I mean, so with Can't Shake It, that was going back to the Angels well, because that's where Face Today came from.
Right.
But I had a thing for the Angels, and for Doc Neeson in particular, and Rick Brewster was a solid guitar player. Um, and I did question myself: should you go back to the well? And then I'm looking at, Quiet Riot doing, basically Slade albums, and
Slade. Right.
I'm going, no, Can't Shake It is a statement you want in the mix at this moment. It's a fucking great rock and roll song. And if it's a fucking great rock and roll song, it's going to be an even better one by the time the white ones have played it. And not that we knew, but apparently that became a hit in Portugal, of all places, and Switzerland.
Well, there you go. But I mean, those are I discovered the Angels based on the covers actually that the Great White tackled. So then I wound up getting the import CDs.
Well, I got to ask you, did you ever get a copy of an album called Skin and Bone?
No, not that one.
You have a pleasure
Okay.
coming to you,
Okay.
because you're going to go online and you're going to find a copy of Skin and Bone and thoroughly enjoy it. It was
Nice.
basically one of their later records.
Okay. Yeah, I got the early stuff, but
Oh, the early stuff is great.
yeah, you can't go wrong there.
If I'm going to play an Angels record, I'll probably play 2 Minute Warning,
There you go.
but most likely I'll pull out Skin and Bone.
Okay. So, wow. So it's either that or the other. So I better dig that one up. I got to hunt that one down.
Hunt it down.
One of the things with this, closing out this 2-disc set, interesting. Love is a Lie.
Well, as far as I know, Ruben, you're
Yeah.
a very happily married man.
Yeah.
I was a very unhappily married man.
Well, I've been there too, though, Alan. I mean, I
Okay.
was there. I was there for 20 years.
Okay.
So I mean, I've done prison time basically. Is the way I saw it.
I know what you mean. You know,
Yeah.
you have kids, and
Exactly.
everything becomes, I endure this
Yeah.
because I want them to have some sense of stability.
Correct.
And I don't like the way she behaves and the way she gets around. I don't have any confidence that she's going to get a substitute father figure into their lives that
Mhm.
I'm going to be happy with.
Right.
So what I do is I put up with her, go away and party, By the way, play Train to Nowhere in the car. But you endure for the kids.
Right.
And somebody once said, if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, do it with one eye closed
Mm,
if you want it to work.
sure. Yeah.
And there is a truth in that.
Right.
Such is the nature of our world, especially the rock and roll world,
Sure.
such is the nature of temptation, boredom, people's fluctuating sense of self-esteem. People go and do crazy fucking things that break up families.
Right.
But that was it. I'm
Right.
sitting there going, fucking love is a lie.
Right.
And I'm
And
getting to the point where I'm not sure that I even want to be around anymore.
hmm
So come and be with me. In the end, we will not see that love is a lie. Come down and
Right.
be with me, and in the end, we will not
Right.
see that love is a lie. It was dark. It was
Yeah.
being completely emotionally crushed.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. and it is interesting. We segued from, talking Great White Stage, but you can't almost I almost don't think you can have the conversation about this album without chatting uh about Psycho City and also Sail Away, because it almost seems like those three things kind of are
Yeah.
interlocked, right?
Yes. That's a very valid observation and a very astute one. And just for your amusement, I mean, obviously, Jack passed. And the most obvious thing I'll say is it's a fucking miracle he lived as long as he did.
Right.
Oh my God. The stories that I will take to my grave. You have no idea.
Right.
There was a time with Jack that I'd have fucking killed him if you put him in a room with me. I'd have beaten every last moment of breath out of him. I was so angry at him. And then there was a time when I actually went to see him perform. Tony Montana persuaded me to come to a gig in Phoenix. I saw him perform. We'd spent time together. And I realized he'd grown, that there had been a spiritual growth within him, and that he was far from perfect. He was still Jack and up to his
Right.
shit. But there was something less selfishly destructive about him that had gone. And for the last few years, my abiding memory of Jack is laughing at all the shit we got up to and all the shit he got up to. And we laughed about it. Our retrospect, the hammer, the hammer I wanted to bury in his head got wrapped in laughter and taken away.
There you go.
And right up to the end. And this includes him sending me a video going, Niv, I'm going to give you this video because you need it, where he talks about having an affair with my ex-wife for 13 years.
Oh,
All right. So,
yeah.
I mean, I had plenty of reason to be angry at him. But at the end of the day, it was about our relationship. And she was irrelevant. Just playtime.
Yeah.
But Jack and I had something more. We had a creative relationship that went with the friendship. And he's one of the most profound people in my life, or one of the most profound impacts in my life. Because we created a whole bunch of music together. And
Right.
extraordinarily, it's still around.
Yeah. Right. This is awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Alan. Always a pleasure talking with you. I mean, I think they always pick up more nuggets when we have our conversations. Hey, the other thing that's kind of interesting, because I am a dork and I collect CDs, but they've reissued Hooked with
Hooked.
the uncensored cover, so I had to pick that one up too. So maybe the next go round we can chat
All right.
about Hooked and a couple records prior to
Yeah,
that one,
of
maybe.
course.
Yeah,
Um,
it'd
but
be
I will
awesome.
tell you one thing about that cover you just showed me.
Yep.
It was one of my mistakes. I
Ah,
fucked. I fucked up. I thought people could get the sense of humor about it, and people go, "Oh, dude, the feminists got all bent out of shape," and so on and so forth. And it's just funny. Women with their beauty put the hook in our mouths. And where I fucked up and what I should have done was I should have done another photo shoot on the end of the fucking pier down in Redondo Beach with Jack hanging by his ankles as
well,
if
there you
he's
go.
a shark that's just been caught,
Right.
and the girl standing there in waders with a
Oh,
big
there you
old
go.
fishing line.
Like a
You know,
trophy.
yeah, exactly. And that.
Well, there
Had,
you
had
go.
I had my wits about me at the moment and not probably been being distracted by GNR, I might
Right.
have thought to do that. But that's what I should have done with that cover.
Right. Nice. Thanks so much for your time. It's always, again, always a pleasure chatting with you.